I'm gonna try the button. I'm gonna try the light. It's spookier that way. It's good. Okay, so that was an awesome story. I really like both of your stories as well, especially Hanny's, because it shows that when stuff hits the fan and you don't have tools, and you really don't know what's going on, and also when it's like, you know, some important event in your life and you have to deal with it, it's really the worst time for stuff to happen. So I'm going to start with a question, okay, by applause. Who likes the show Silicon Valley? Anybody watch that show? Okay, good. Okay, so you guys are going to know what I'm talking about. So my story is called, in Spanish, the Fábula de Tres Anillos Malignos, which is this tale of the three evil rings. And the reason I called it that is because if you watch Silicon Valley, you know about Tres Camas Tequila. Anybody remember Tres Camas Tequila? So it's called Tres Camas because it was invented by a billionaire, and you have 3 commas in the number of billion. So that's his status symbol. And the Tres Camas Tequila is a cursed object. And so I'm going to tell you a story today about another cursed object that had 3 rings in it. So, you know, it sounds really funny. You think, oh, cursed object, how is that going to mess up my day, you know? You plan for a lot of things in DevOps. You try to plan for attacks. But you're thinking at the start of your journey, you're like, well, no one's really going to denial of service attack me now. Like, I have a small website. Nobody knows about it. You know, it's fine. It's fine. All my customers are good. So, you know, it's really unlikely that you're going to get attacked. And then one day, something like what happened to Hanny happens, and stuff is hitting the fan, and you're thinking, oh my God, we're under attack. Oh my God, we're under attack. And you got to find out how to fix this. And so, you know, in this case, the cursed object was a 3-ring binder, and it actually wasn't an attack. It was that one of our customers had laid the 3-ring binder on a key that continually refreshed the page. And I mean a lot, okay? So we didn't really know that at the time, but we were looking for ways to handle it. And this was a time when I was actually really new at this gig, so we didn't have all the tools that we needed. So I started searching for ways to fix it. So the first thing you do is you try to detect what's going on. So the first thing I did, because I don't have a whole lot of tools, is I go upstream and I ask the gods at Amazon and a bunch of other people, what's happening, just like you did, how can we fix this? And what Amazon are going to tell you is that if you run an elastic load balancer, they have no way to block anything by IP. They can't do it. Oh, you okay? So they can't block anything by IP. So you're getting hammered from some IP somewhere in some country, and there's nothing you can do to stop it at that level. And you know, maybe you've got, maybe this IP actually maps to one of your customers, which then you think, okay, I want to shut them off. But you can't, because you won't let you. And also, you have a bunch of other people at this customer site who are all coming from the same IP. So even if you could shut them off, there's going to be more than one person at that customer who's going to be pissed off because you shut off their access, so that's not too good. And at this case, the best way to handle it for us was to actually call our customer service department and to reach out to the customer and phone them and ask them a really embarrassing question, which is like, what's going on, guys? And it's like, well, you're hitting our website really hard, you know, and we can't actually block it. We have to admit that we can't stop what they're doing. So the thing is, eventually they went down to the warehouse and they looked around and they found out that someone had laid a binder on a keyboard, and that was what was going on. So that wasn't so great. So mostly my story is about the moral of the story, because I think DevOps, for one, you've got to convince your organization that what you're doing is the right thing to do, because you're trying to be prepared for stuff like this when it happens. And if you're constantly reacting to problems and you're not being proactive, then when a problem really happens, you're just not going to be prepared. So the moral is to prepare in advance. So what do you need to prepare in advance? Well, first of all, you need some metrics to figure out where the attack or the problem is coming from. So you need some centralized logging. You might want to get into New Relic. You're going to need some graphing. And the other thing you're going to want to think about is, how do I throttle connections on my web app? Because that doesn't come in the box. You don't just get a throttling system. So we actually ended up using something that Kickstarter came up with. This was after the binder attack. We implemented something called Rack Attack, which is pretty good. You know, Rack Attack's not perfect, because one of the things you have to do when you block incoming connections from people is remember who is who, and you need a naughty and a nice list of who's good and who's bad. And you need thresholds of like, well, how many times can you hit my website within 5 minutes before I think you're being abusive? So you have to define all that, and it needs to store all that in a database. So I'll give you my next horror story. We set this up, which was great. You know, we had throttling. That's awesome. And the naughty and nice list is stored in a database called Redis. A lot of you use it. I think you also mentioned it, right? one day the Redis server went down. It was a purpose-built Redis server. All it was doing was sitting there and making sure that it knew who was naughty and nice. And it went down, and the web server didn't really like that because now it didn't know who was naughty and nice, so it went down too. So that wasn't great. So when you use these things, you need to test them. But I think the moral of the story basically is that things aren't always what they seem. I was surprised that you said that it was Korean hackers. I thought it was going to be a trick. I thought it was something else. Like I thought your VP had something else going on. But in this case, it wasn't what we thought. And we would have known that if we had the right metrics. And I'm proud to say that we spent the last year building a lot of that stuff with Chef, with Sensu, with Graphite. We've rolled a lot of that out, and now we have a lot more confidence, we sleep a lot better, and we've also brought our SLA from like 99.5 to 100 this month, so that's pretty good. Good year. Yeah, good SLA. So that's my story. Be prepared, and watch out for those cursed objects.